G'day! Welcome back to my little channel. The second episode of the T4 Volkswagen Multivan Bus saga. So anyway, hopefully you enjoy it. Sit back, grab a beer, relax, have a look. Yeah, g'day. I'm Brendan, an Australian tradesman currently living in Berlin. So, I think we had done the front section last time, and now this time we're going to do the rear section, show you how I did that, and some of the inner fenders, a little bit on there. I changed the spreller under the sliding door. I have chopped and changed the footage a bit because I filmed some of the right hand side before I did the left, and that footage is better than the left, so you have to bear with me. I'm swapping between sides, but showing you basically just a brief, quick way overall of how I rebuilt the bus. So anyway, hopefully you enjoy it. I'll just show you on the right hand side what it starts off looking like. I've done a few of these T4 buses since I've been here in Germany, and they all go in this. There's like a reinforcing line here above the shock absorber mount, and they've always got holes there, and this is what they look like when you see them. They're covered in body deadener, and they all go around these lips here. This has had somebody in the past, which no, it wasn't me, really bodgily weld some little patches over the holes and then smear it with Sikaflex and then buy some cheap Chinese chrome covers, wheel arch covers that was hiding all of that. Alright, let's start cleaning up above this right hand rear shucker with a needle gun. Then I'll move on to the wire wheel and get rid of some of this body deadener and get it back to bare metal so we can see what we're dealing with. Okay, so here we are on the right hand rear. I'm starting to get through some of the body deadener. As you can see, there's heaps of it. And surprise, surprise, more holes. The actual gusset plate on this side doesn't look too bad, but there's some rust under it here at the back. So this will still have to come off and be checked behind, because potentially there could be a rust hole in the chassis from behind. Looks like we're rebuilding a chassis rail again. Perfect. So, just cut out the rusty bits until you find some good metal. And there's not much metal left, as you can see. Now, let's make a template of the hole using a piece of old cardboard and a hammer, and just tap around the edge, get the shape. And then we transfer that to a piece of sheet metal, 3mm sheet metal, and prep it to weld in. And that weld goes through both sides. Can't really see in here too. Can't really see it, but that weld goes right through from this side. So I've already prepared this. Maybe you can buy them, I'm not sure. It's a plate. I cheated, I fabricated the lip on the top instead of folding it. It's 1.6. This is how it started out. I just made a real bodgy tool there. And hammered it in. This is the one for the other side. Which leaves a plate like that, which then turn into a plate like this. Of course, you've got to remember there's a left and a right. So yeah, I'll clean it up, cut it out and show you what it looks like. And then just weld the bastard in there, and voila. Just a side note from the bus job. I'm just here in my day job, and the boss has just bought quite a nice tidy Volks Wagon Bora, which is basically a Golf 4 with a boot on it, or a cofferraum. And anyway, this left-hand rear door wouldn't open. Not from the inside, not from the outside. It didn't have any of the same scenarios as anything on the internet. And it was actually the electric motor in the central locking was pulling the lock down hard. So no matter what you did with the inside or the outside handles, it wouldn't open. So anyway, I managed to, while lying across where the back seat should be, managed to pull the internal trim off without damaging it. And then no matter what I tried, couldn't get the latch to release. The latch is right up inside there. There it is at the back there, at the end of this cable. So I resorted to my favourite tool, the air chisel, and smashed the lock apart to get the central locking motor off the lock, and voila, the door opened. So now I've got to replace that. All part of this German engineering, how, you know, the world leaders in engineering and all that. You get that lock out now, glass out, all the rubber trim, this rail here, and then you can finally get the lock out. And the lock looks like this. This is the replacement one. As you can see, it's actually supplied by Fisher-Price. Lots of cheap plastic moving components there. What could possibly go wrong? It's only a door lock. I mean, it's not as if it's a safety issue on a vehicle to have a door that opens and closes. Then once it all goes back in there and it's threaded up in that tiny little hole, see this little cable here? This one. This has got to be threaded through in the rear corner of this door to the outside handle and clipped on in this tiny little slot. You can't get any tools in. See that little slot in the back of the handle? And see where the lock is in the door? Look, I know I'm carrying on here like a pork chop, but this is sort of what I'm trying to explain with this whole door lock scenario, whereas now I've got the old one out, as you can see, window out, Bailey channel out, all the plastic trim off, everything. You've got to gut the whole door to get the lock out. That's what I'm trying to say. And then usually I think what the problem is that this little cable here, this little thing here, looks like a hearing aid, except it's smaller. This is what connects the handle that some burly German guy that's just drank 4 litres of good quality German beer and got a belly full of good quality German Wurst is going to open the back door to get home from the pub. This is what he's pulling on, this here. What could go wrong? And then this here has got to be threaded into, this is the back of the handle. Again, I think Fisher-Price won the tender to design and manufacture these components. And this is got to go into this little slot here at the back. It pops in there. And then you call your local gynecologist and they insert that cable back onto the end of the lock, which is located up inside here. It's such a great design, isn't it? Anyway, sorry about the whinging, but yeah, anyway, I just thought, to those of us who have never had anything to do with European vehicles, thank you, lucky stars, because you know, this is what you deal with on a daily basis. Anyway, that's my rant. Let's get back into the bus. And now we'll carry on with the top of the rear spring mounts. Perfect, yeah? So this is underneath the floor, which is actually underneath the back seat mounts. And this is what holds up the weight of the bus. So the spring sits on this plate underneath. So first the 3mm plate gets replaced on the chassis. And then there's a thicker 4mm plate, which actually the spring sits on and gets welded underneath that. Good enough for this old girl. So this is rebuilding the 4mm plate, which goes underneath the chassis, and the pipe section in the middle is a bump stop, and locates the spring. So I fabricated this out of a piece of 6mm because I couldn't find some 4mm, and then welded it back in underneath the new 4mm plate. And repeat the same again on the other side. So this particular part usually goes on from underneath, but I'm just going to show you for demonstration purposes where it goes. Now that the spring mounts are both repaired, I'm going to move on to repairing the inner wheel arches, and I'll just show you how I do it. This is not a how-to show, this is a how I do show. So I'll just show you how I shape a bit of sheet metal to look a bit like a Volkswagen and then weld it onto the bus. I'll just jump on our trusty old restored folder and fold some reinforcing lines in the panel to suit what is already in the fender. Check that out. And now I'll fold some flanges on the outside. Now it's time to test out that Chinese strinker stretcher machine and just stretch the flange to get the panel to curve to copy the original silhouette of the panel that I'm trying to copy. I'll just try and get a bit better idea of the finished silhouette by using this profile gauge, and then it saves me running back and forth to the bus from the strinker stretcher. There's the problem hole right there. So I'll just use the slide bevel now to get an idea of the angle between the floor and the side. Then I'll place it on the panel next to the flange, which is at the wrong angle, and pretend to scribe a line for camera purposes, and then move the flange to the correct angle. Just cut the bits off that don't look like a Volkswagen, throw them away. That's the angle the flange should be at, which I would have known if I'd made a template. Still doesn't look like a Volkswagen, so cut a bit more off. That's a bit more like it. It's getting there now. Now back on the shrinker stretcher, shrink the bottom flange, get it to wrap around the bottom on the floor, and just winging it as I go, have a bit of a look. Can't be bothered with the profile gauge. And, whoops, stretched it a bit too much. Oh well, that's what the welder's for, eh? Now for a bit of massaging with a mallet and with the palm of my hand, give it a bit of a twitch here and there. Perfect. I know, a bit more shrinking first, but there we go, perfect. I'll just show you how that looks sitting in position at this stage. Still needs a bit of fine tuning. I'll show you how to do that now. So just chuck some tech screws in there. Where would an Aussie tradie be without tech screws? So the idea with the tech screws is just to pin the panel in a few spots where it already fits quite well, and then just go around with a chisel and a hammer, whatever tool you think fits best, and just massage the edges into where you want it to sit. So of course this doesn't really work on outside panels or anything with a lot of precision, but just for an inside panel like this, a mudguard, it just helps to save a lot of time forming the panel perfectly when you can just basically bang it into shape, in position, screw it down, and get it all ready to weld off. So there you go. Once I finish manipulating it into shape and I'm happy with it, I unscrew it, pull it out, trim it all up on the edges, make it look a bit nicer, punch all the holes around the outside for plug welding. So there you go, she's all screwed back into position. Pretty much every second hole you want to make sure your overlap's nice and tight, no air gaps between, and then you're ready to weld. And now on to filling in the next hole. So this will be the outer lip on the rear fender and the filler panel between the outer lip and the inner mudguard that we've just repaired. I didn't record replacing either of the rear fender lips, but that was a part that was bought. It's a Polish replacement panel. I just trimmed it up for the outer lip that I needed and welded it on. The next part of the project I attempted was behind the rear wheel, right at the bottom. It goes behind the bumper bar, sort of an odd shaped panel. And the rear crossmember behind the bumper, replaced all the rusty sections there. So with that section behind the rear wheels being repaired and replaced and the rear crossmember, the next thing I moved on to was the rear of the inner wheel arch. So I made a panel to replace the rear quarter for that and got that in there, and then I could make the corner of the floor behind the rear wheel arch to the back door. Welded her in. Job's all good. Blind man be happy to see it. I reckon that's a good spot to leave the bus work for this episode, and we'll move on to something a little different in the next episode. I think we'll go back to having a bit of a look around. We'll probably take the Sophia to stretch its little 1.6 litre legs on a trip to Denmark for a bit of a look around there, before we get back into the bus in another episode where we're going to be ripping up the floorboards and replacing some cross members, etc., and getting it ready for painting underneath. But on a different note, I'll just show you something else I found while out and about this week. I'm just here with the girls at a local friendly Bahnhof just down the street from the house. We've just been doing a bit of horse riding, and now that it's winter time and all the leaves are off the trees, you can actually see this next to where we park the cars. There's this big grand old gateway, which was obviously some sort of building behind in the past, and right next to it is one of these. Maybe you haven't seen. It's a one-man air raid shelter from back in the day, and yeah, we'll just have a bit of a look. Little window you can look out. It's probably the right shape to have a gun barrel sticking out of there, although the gap's not wide enough in this particular one. Another one around there. You see the old hinges, the old door. There you go. The alarm went off, you could hear the poms coming and you jump in there. Close the door and pray for the best. Yeah, thanks again for watching, and please subscribe. Catch you again next time, So see you later. Thanks again.